You think there's media bias? You think there's fake news going on out there? Got a couple texts in about that asking me about it. I think so. Let's get to Kyle Drennen. Kyle is Senior News Analyst for MRC, Media Research Center, and he is with us now. They've been tracking how the different media networks are playing these two conventions, and we're going to go to Kyle now. Kyle, great to have you with us, man.
Thanks for having me on.
So tell us what's going on here. You guys track media, and you expose on a daily basis, you expose the fake and phony news. Give us a little insight here into the covering of these two conventions.
Well, not really surprisingly, last week they were swooning every night and every morning after each speech. And this week they are just trying to find any excuse to trash the Republican convention for any slight thing. Last night everyone pretty much agreed Melania Trump had a great speech, and she got great reviews. But NBC News during their coverage, they couldn't just leave it that way. They needed to find something. They actually criticized her for condemning looting. That was their big criticism that they came up with to try and,
You have to be kidding me. NBC condemned Melania Trump for, exactly what did they say, or can you just be a little specific?
Yeah, they said Lester Holt actually brought it up, the anchor of all the coverage on NBC, and he basically said, well, because at one point she said people should not be, looting, quote, in the name of justice. They, if you're protesting for justice, you shouldn't be looting, basically. And Lester Holt essentially said, well, that's not, that's going to, that's going to raise some eyebrows. That's going to be seen as controversial because, there's all these peaceful protesters out there, and, that's, basically, she may have raised some eyebrows when she talked about the need to stop looting in the name of justice. There will be those who will take offense to that who are in the streets protesting, not necessarily looting. So, I don't think she was condemning peaceful people. I think she was condemning looters.
Well, this is where the Democrat Party is now. Their constituents base are looters and mobs. It's stunning that none of these people can condemn it. In fact, though, I do have to say, Don Lemon last night finally. Look, they're looking at the ratings. They're tanking during the RNC. They're looking at the poll numbers. Trump is saying jobs, not mobs. That's why he's raising in the suburbs now. They're looking at this. Even Don Lemon last night had to come on and say, the fact that Biden never mentioned any of these mobs or looters is hurting him. No kidding, Don.
Yeah, no, him and Chris Cuomo, after sort of excusing all the rioting, for months, are now sort of like, the two of them last night were kind of like, oh, wait, all this rioting doesn't really look that good. And the fact that Democrats ignored it and that Republicans are taking it on directly, that's probably going to help Republicans. It's probably going to help Trump, and it's probably going to hurt Democrats. It's sort of like, yeah, no kidding. They sort of woke up to that realization last night.
One of the things you had on Monday night was that CNN interrupted the GOP convention 6 times on Monday, but the same Monday they only did that twice for the Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. And actually we did a study, a pretty comprehensive study, showing that CNN and MSNBC, they aired 90% of the Democratic convention last week, just uninterrupted, just letting it play. And we started out this week by putting out that study and basically saying, well, I guess they're going to have to cover 90% of the Republican convention if they want to be fair. Obviously, they're not doing that. CNN and MSNBC, if they can find any excuse to just cut off the RNC and bring on their left wing guests, they'll do it. They'll find any excuse to do it. They'll just dip in and then they'll immediately go back to their panel of so-called experts to trash everything you just heard. So that's how they're covering it this week as opposed to what they did last week.
We're with Kyle Drennen on the John Fredericks Show. Kyle is a Senior News Analyst for Media Research Center, MRC. On Monday night, they absolutely trashed Tim Scott. Here's a very, very thoughtful, very serious African-American senator from South Carolina, comes on TV, makes a speech. Your friends at the fake news rake him over the coals. What was that about?
Yeah, no, it's they are just sort of threatened by anybody, who comes out and sort of gives a broad, kind of uplifting speech like that, who represents the Republican Party. The Democrats are kind of scared to death of that, and their allies in the media are similarly scared, and so they can't let this convention be a success. That's their mission, is to declare this a failure, preemptively, or, certainly by the end of the week, they want to say this was a failed convention. The Democrats was a fantastic convention. The Republicans had a failed, chaotic mess of a convention. That's what they want to declare. It's not working out for them.
It's not working out.
So they're desperately trying to, nitpick, find anything. I mean, last night they were so much made of Mike Pompeo spoke. Oh, my gosh, that violates the Hatch Act. And, the Republic is going to come crumbling down because he gave a 10-minute speech. And, I mean, they're just desperate to find anything to declare this a failure, and it's really not working out for them.
Well, tell us about the numbers, Kyle. I mean, we had some overnight numbers come on Monday. I know that CNN was way, way down from what they normally are. But give us some numbers, some download numbers, juxtaposing the two conventions so far.
In terms of the ratings, in terms of people just watching the convention generally, wherever they're watching it, the RNC has gotten much higher ratings than the Democratic convention. I think it was something like 5 times the amount, this week versus last week. So that's a big number right there. More people are tuning in this week to the Republican convention than they were last week to the Democrats. And in terms of the media coverage of it, again, they are interrupting the Republican convention far more than they were interrupting the Democratic convention. They were much happier to just let the Democrats, say whatever they wanted to say uninterrupted. This week it's constantly interrupting for, again, so-called experts to do so-called fact-checking or what have you, really just trashing everything. So we're seeing that huge difference this week. And, they're just desperate to just find anything to go after Republicans for this week. And last week, this week they're talking about, this is all dark and divisive, which incidentally is exactly the same thing as what the Biden campaign has been putting out in press releases. You can't tell the difference between what the media is reporting, what the Biden campaign is saying this week. And last week, Joe Biden literally said Trump has cloaked America in darkness, and they all applauded, the media. They thought that was fantastic. They thought that was a wonderful winning message. And now this week, Republicans go after the Democrats. It's like, oh my gosh, can you believe they went after their opponents? Oh, that's so unseemly. It's like, well, last week you thought it was fantastic.
Well, too, I saw some montage that somebody put together. I guess the talking point for the Democrats all week was, Kyle, was dark.
Yeah.
So there was somebody put it together, a montage with the talking heads on these various fake news networks, and it was 50 people said it was dark. Monday night was dark. It was dark.
Yeah.
This one after the other, dark, 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 dark. I thought Monday night was one of the most uplifting video things I've ever seen. Most of it there was live, but it was uplifting. It was inspiring. And I'm saying, you guys just picked out a word, and the DNC decided that's what you were going to go with, and everybody said it, and it didn't have any basis in reality. That Monday night was anything but dark. It was inspiring, uplifting, and bright. But they were stuck with that word, so they repeated it over and over and over, and to just see every single left-wing talking head say it was hilarious.
Yeah, no, they do. Quite frankly, if the Biden campaign and the DNC didn't put out press releases, I don't know what they would report on any of these media outlets. I don't know who would write the script for them. But, it's just, really, it's a part of it is projection, because last week was so dark and gloomy every night. Every night. Just seemed like every speech was, oh my gosh, America is...
It's horrible. It's a horrible place to live. And, we're horrible people. We're racist. Right. We're this. We're that.
And now this week, of course, every convention you have some red meat speeches going after the opponents, but you also have kind of broad, soaring, uplifting speeches. It's a mixture of speeches, but there's so much more positivity going on this week than you saw last week, and they're totally flipping it around, trying to pretend that, oh, this is such a dark presentation, and last week was, all sunshine and rainbows. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the opposite of reality.
Kyle Drennen with us, senior analyst at MRC Media Research Center, blasting the fake news. So what do you see here in the next 2 days? The first 2 days, the RNC convention ratings 5x. I mean, first of all, to get 5 times another rating, I mean, that's 5x right now after 2 days of what the Democrats are. Or like one day, we only know Monday. We're not going to get Tuesday till later on. But one day, we have the one-day chart, 5x. Kyle, what do you look for the next 2 days, media-wise?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, Pence is speaking tonight. Trump is speaking tomorrow night. So, this is really where I think the media are going to amp up their attacks. I mean, not that you haven't seen a lot of attacks already after the first 2 days, but, now that Pence and then Trump are speaking, I mean, this is, they're going to go after them with everything that they've got. And just, again, continue to push this is dark, this is divisive, this is awful. And once again, by Friday, I mean, their goal is to say this was a failure. The Democrats had a very successful, amazing convention. Republicans had a failed convention, and that's how they're going to try and play this. I also, sadly, would not be surprised. I mean, we have this hurricane in the Gulf right now. I would not be surprised if the media try to exploit that situation to, hammer the Republicans, depending on how that goes.
It's like, what does Trump have to do with a hurricane, right? Nothing, but they'll...
Yeah, no.
Nothing, but it doesn't matter. They'll blame it on him.
Yeah, sadly, we've seen it so many times before with other things, and so it's just, I would not put that past them at this point.
One thing that you were pointing out in your email to me was the venom on MSNBC saying that they were fearing a Trump monarchy. Like, what exactly were they saying there? Because I don't watch MSNBC. I know you sent that email out, but what were they saying? They were fearing a Trump monarchy?
Yeah, no, I mean, and honestly, they've been saying this for, throughout the Trump presidency, really, this idea that, Trump thinks he's a king, Trump wants to be a dictator, he's an authoritarian. I mean, this was just kind of more of that same narrative they have been pushing, and I mean, it's this relentless attack that they just keep pushing. And really, I mean, the Democrats are the ones who want this massive government that controls every aspect of people's lives, and yet it's Trump who's the dictator in waiting, who wants to be a king, according to them. But again, it's like, well, last time I checked, the Democrats are the ones who, again, want to sort of take over people's lives using the government in every conceivable way. So, that seems to be another case of projection here.
What I thought got no coverage. There was some interview I saw. I forget who the interviewer was. She didn't look very professional, but she sat down with Hillary Clinton, who made this statement, and this was just a couple days ago, that Biden shouldn't concede if he loses under any circumstances. And she said, just don't concede. Just do not concede. It's probably fraudulent. They probably stole it. So regardless of the outcome, and she said this like in a video, being interviewed with somebody, I don't care what happens. Biden should never, ever concede. Just keep fighting, get lawyers and fight. Could you imagine if a Republican said that? Of that stature? Like if let's get a former, presidential candidate. John's dead. Mitt Romney. Let's say if one of the Cheneys said that, like Dick Cheney, could you imagine how they get skewered?
Yeah, no, I mean, it would be incredible. I mean, they would just be, talking about that every minute of the day. Hillary Clinton says it, nobody bats an eye. I mean, the media, nobody's talking about it. That's fine.
Not a word. Not a word.
Yeah, they just pretend like it didn't happen.
Crazy.
John
Fredericks
really,
Radio
they
Network.
Support it.
Kyle, we're out of time. I want to thank you for being with us. Kyle Drennen, John Fredericks Radio Network.